If there's one guy in Indian chess whose games I look forward to with great anticipation and interest, it has to be our Praggnanandhaa. The 12-year-old is playing at the World Juniors in Tarvisio, Italy, and today is a rest day after 5 rounds, and he is on 4.5 out of 5, which is a fantastic score. There is one player on 5 out of 5, but Praggnanandhaa has beaten two extremely strong players in rounds 4 and 5. First of all, the top seed Jorden van Foreest, and in the 5th round he was against S.L.Narayanan, the talented Indian grandmaster, 18-year-old, who has a rating of 2585. Now, I saw S.L.Narayanan playing at the National A very closely at the National Premier just a week ago, and I can tell you he is a great mixture of calmness along with aggression. So, if you are looking at him, he would have absolutely no expressions on his face, you know, like a calm boy just sitting on the board, but his moves are so powerful. So I have always considered Narayanan to be a very, very strong opponent, and Praggnanandhaa took him heads on in this game. You know, first of all he took him in a line where Narayanan was extremely well prepared. Praggnanandhaa figured out the complexities on the board, and from that he managed to outplay his opponent. So let's have a look at this beautiful game by Praggnanandhaa. He's black, Narayanan is white, and if you look at this setup, the bishop on b6 is very nicely placed, yeah, actively, but it is sorely being missed on e7, and although when the bishop is on e7 it's passive, it's very solid. Now, as the bishop is not there, the c1 guy has moved to g5 and created this irritating pin. It's not easy to get out of it. So what Praggnanandhaa did was, he said, well, I don't see anything wrong, let's push you back at 6. 5.5 minutes for this move by Pragg. Bishop h4 played immediately. So now Pragg is thinking, yeah, his opponent is well prepared. I would definitely think of, you know, something solid like rook e8 or e into d4, something like this. But you know, these young kids, very ambitious, g5, not fearing any sacrifices there. And of course Narayanan, he took up the challenge. He took the pawn on g5 and bishop into g5. Now this is usually quite a typical sacrifice. The knight on f6 is pinned, the queen is coming to f3. Okay, so this is going to be quite a dangerous move, but black has his resources. So first thing he does is takes on d4. Now queen f3 could be met with either king g7 or even a move like knight e5. Now this is an interesting point to note, that after queen into f6, such a position is very good compensation. Even though black is a pawn down here, he has such nice center control with all his pieces, and these extra pawn, this h pawn which is an extra pawn, doesn't really make any difference for now because it's right on the side of the board. So after queen f3, you could either play knight e5 or king g7, and I don't see a way to finish off the game. You know, there are these nice tricks where you go queen g3, knight h5 attacking the queen, and now queen g4 looks strong because there is a discovered check and queen is attacked. But now knight e5, these knight jumps, and queen h5, you have rook h8, and somehow black has come out of the mess completely. So in the game, after e takes d4, white simply recaptured knight cd4. Knight takes on d4, and now the bishop on b3 is hanging, so bishop d5. This is a nice move. If you were to take the bishop on d5, ed5, this is already winning for white, nearly winning, because knight comes to c3. There are instances when this rook comes from a3 to g3. The other rook could come up to e3 or e4. This is very dangerous, you know. So can't take on d5. This is a strong move. And here Pragg, who has no idea what's going on, mind you, Narayanan is playing his moves quickly. He plays this move knight e6 after 19 minutes of thought. He finds this on the board, which is truly phenomenal, because if you take on b7, knight into g5, and you take on a8, queen a8, it's not so easy to understand that is excellent compensation for black. First of all, after a b5 over here, I would imagine that there are some troubles down the a file, but then knight g e4. So this is nice. In fact, it's not a question of compensation, because black is doing materially fine. And after, let's say, knight c3, queen c8, the queen might come into, you know, sometime to g4, or there might be some knight h3 checks. There are all sorts of things happening here. So I have a feeling that Pragg was understood the dynamics very well after bishop takes b7 move, and he played this knight e6. By the way, this is not a novelty. These games have been played. Sutovsky has played from the white side against Bosiocic. Again, Narayanan plays bishop h4 immediately. So you can imagine Pragg taking all his time on the board, Narayan still in his preparation, king on g8, shuddering, hoping that he won't get mated, and then c6. Strong move. Nice defense. And now comes rook to a3. This is the move where Narayanan thought for nearly 18 minutes. So I have a feeling that this is where he was out of his preparation. Queen f3 looked natural and very strong. There are some very nice lines, like Bosiocic, he played bd4 against Sutovsky, and after the move e5 he was immediately in big trouble, because after something like say bishop e5, rook e5 is just terminal, you know, game is over. And if you in the game he took on d5, but after queen g4 you lose the queen anyway, and the game is got over pretty soon. So queen f3 is a strong move actually, but white can play, you know, the king g7, which is the most natural move, loses to rook a3, and cd queen f5, just finish, rook comes to g3. So black has to play knight d4, queen f4, knight e6, and this is like a repetition if you go back to f3. But if white wants to make black's task difficult, he can take on e6, get his rook to a3, coming to g3, but somehow black manages to defend. This is just an illustrative line which I tried to show over here. King f7, queen h5, and the game ends in a draw. So that was about queen f3, but in the game after c6, white plays rook to a3. Now when I was seeing this game live, it reminded me of this game where Kasparov played rook a3 idea in the Roy Lopez against Karpov in their match, 1990 match in Lyon, and it was such a wonderful game. Kasparov sacrificed so many pieces to mate the black's king, and here Narayanan too has no small intentions. Yeah, he's put his rook on a3. Pragg takes on d5. He sees that there's nothing wrong. He takes it after 4 minutes of thought. So rook g3, and now knight goes to g7. So how to continue the attack? That's the question. Queen f3 would have been nice move. It's natural. You are attacking f6. So bishop d4 has to be played. There is not too much other options. There is a possibility of d into e4, but it's complicated. Let's see, bishop d4, e5, and now if you take bishop e5, you are of course lost after rook e5. Strong move. So you play knight e4. This is nice move, because after you play bishop d8, there is knight g3, and materially if you look, black is doing fine because he has a rook and two minor pieces for the queen. And after, let's say something like, I'm just trying to say make a move like this, you come to a situation where, although black has, I think black has a rook and two bishops for a queen, so black is completely fine here. Yeah, no issues. So this doesn't work. e5, knight e4, yeah, and the right line could be something. Even I checked rook g7, king g7, rook e4, queen g4, and even this queen sacrifice works very fine for black. He has good compensation here. In fact, white has to take perpetual at some point, otherwise he is in trouble. So in the game, knight g7, queen f3 had to be played, and this is the critical mistake of the game. Narayanan makes the move e5. Now he was hoping that black would have to take d e5. Now once this move is made, this is just curtains after something like queen f3. You know, there is no real good way to defend the knight on f6, and white should be winning, because you know he blocked this bishop coming to d4 after, you know, the pawn is on e5 now, so the bishop can no longer come to d4 and defend the knight on f6. But as it turned out, after e5, Narayanan had missed a very simple tactic. Simple when you look at it after the game, but during the game not so simple. So can you find it? Black to play. Pragg was like this crouching tiger. Yeah, he was just waiting for his opportunity, and he took on f2. Now such moves, you might say they are just desperados, but they work so perfectly in the position, because after, you have to take the bishop or else you lose the rook on g3, and once you take queen b6 check, and after d5 the queen defends the knight laterally, the attack is over because the knight is no longer pinned. This was black's biggest trouble in the entire game, that his knight was pinned, but once the queen comes to b6, it's all over. After this, Pragg was quite clinical. He could have played knight h7, which was more accurate, and play f6 here, but okay, knight e4 is not at all bad, and pieces came off. Here white wins back one of the piece, but he is still an exchange down, and Pragg managed to convert this without any difficulties. So an extremely complicated game, and what I liked tremendously about this was that even though he was outplayed in the opening completely, you know, I wouldn't say outplayed, sorry, outprepared in the opening completely, Pragg did not crack. You know, he was there, he was finding the resources. These moves like knight d4 to e6 and finding all these ideas, simply tremendous. Fantastic game. By the way, we just came to know that, I mean, I knew it before, that the winner of World Junior Championship gets directly the GM title, but I never thought about it, because always in World Juniors you have some 30 to 35 grandmasters fighting, even sometimes more, and always a GM wins. But this is the first time when I have a feeling that a non-GM would win it, and Praggnanandhaa could not only be the youngest guy to win the World Juniors, but he would get the GM title and become the youngest GM in the world, beating Karyakin's record. Well, it's a long way to go still, but there is a high possibility of this happening.